to Travel with Joy. I'm your host, Joy Armania. I'm a flight attendant, Navy reservist, and a storyteller. And this podcast is about finding the meaning in life and also about where travel meets journey and discovery. And today we are meeting with my friend, Dr. Sarah Rasby. We actually met, I want to say about 13 years ago. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and I don't even remember the first occurrence, although I know it was at yoga. Correct.
Actually, I think it was yoga.
Was it? It was yoga.
Yeah, I actually wanted to get into yoga. So I reached out to you because you were the co-owner.
That's right.
And I asked if I could do this trade where we would basically, I would work at the front desk and I would be able to go to yoga for free. So that was like really nice of you, and that was really amazing.
You're welcome. And that was also before I realized that was illegal to trade services.
Oh, no way. Ooh.
The things we got away with back in the day.
Wow, no, I didn't. Ooh, maybe I should have said that.
No, you're fine. What do they call that? A statute of limits?
Okay, the statute of limitations.
Yes,
we might have exceeded that.
Yeah,
okay, good.
Oh, sorry. I'm not going to name places. It wasn't even in Nebraska.
Yeah.
So, it was in Iowa.
Yeah, Des Moines. So let's start from, the beginning of everything. So where did you grow up? And tell me about your childhood.
Yeah. So I am from the Heartland. I grew up in the Blair area, which is about 20 miles north of Omaha. I grew up there, and also a little bit in Omaha because my parents were divorced. So my dad lived in Omaha. My mom lived in Blair. Born and raised in Nebraska. So I would consider myself, kind of a child of the wild from the Nebraska plains, if you will. So, that's where I'm from.
Now, when you were growing up, what were you into? What were some of your hobbies?
Yeah. I was into sports. I went to a small private school, and at that school we didn't have a lot of resources, and so we were able, and I say we because I'm a twin, and we played softball, we played volleyball. We love doing the sports, but also, living in Nebraska, as they say, there isn't a lot to do as you would think. But growing up in a small town, especially in the Blair area, it was one of those places where I could ride my bike wherever I went. My sister and I, my friends, that's what we did in the summer. As we got up, we rode our bikes everywhere. We would go check in with our parents at work. They were in a small enough town where you could ride to go see them. And then we'd hit the pool for hours and go to the ice cream shop and then go hang out with our parents at nighttime. It was very joyful. And I love that aspect about small towns. So I did a lot of that and just spent time with family and friends. I grew up playing outside all of the time. My stepdad was, or still is, a fisherman and a hunter. And so we would go camping on the weekends on the Missouri River, just really pioneer almost, where we would just find a location, we'd put the tent up, and we'd swim all day long in the Missouri River in little areas. And so I was brought up and taught how to kind of navigate some of those spaces, and literally just ran around barefoot in the fields. It was glorious.
That sounds amazing. It makes me sad that now it's it's not safe to just, but I kind of lived in the same, my mom was just go outside until it's dark. Yeah. And then it was just figure it out.
Well, and even in Omaha, when we were with my dad, we just roamed the streets with the neighbor girls up the street and the neighbor kids. And we were all so different. And there was even one of the girls that had a very profound disability, and she had a wheelchair and a trach. And we just ran up and down the streets like regular kids. And so that was very jovial, as well as being able to be in those neighborhoods. And then there was neighborhoods next to us that my friends lived in, and we would just roam around. So that was a very wonderful thing about our childhood that I don't think a lot of kids do these days.
Oh no, with electronics.
I know. My kids.
Now, did you guys go on any family vacations?
Yeah, so a lot of them I would consider was the camping. We a few times went up to South Dakota. So this was with my mom and my stepdad, camping all of the time, fishing on the river, spending time on the boat all of the time. And with my dad, we went to Colorado once. We really weren't a well-off family at all. So I remember being little, like going to kindergarten, and there was a boy in there that went to Disney World, and I thought, oh my gosh, like he got to go on a plane ride.
Yeah.
He got to go to Disney World, and that was something that we just couldn't afford to do. But Colorado and South Dakota, Missouri, and just really doing kind of those wholesome family trips where you went and saw, monuments, or you went and explored the parks and all of that. So I did love that. I loved that growing up.
And I love that a lot of that stuff is like very affordable. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
no cost.
State
And it's like,
parks.
yeah, it's just like,
We took advantage of that
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, no, I love that. And when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh goodness. I think at first I wanted to be a secretary. I don't know why. I remember that. And then I started really liking history. So at one point I wrote down, I think it was like sixth grade, I'm going to be the first female president.
Ooh, you still can.
I know, I don't know. But it's interesting. I was back at my mom's over Christmas, and she pulls out these tubs of all the things I had when I was a child. I didn't even know she still had those. And I do remember this, and I don't remember what grade it was. It was something in middle school, but we had to fill out this form or this document about like, where do you see yourself when you're an adult? And I wrote on there, oh, I want this type of house. I have this many kids. This is what I do. And it's amazing. I didn't even know that I wrote on there I wanted to be a college professor.
No.
I didn't even know that.
Wow.
I don't remember having that aspiration. And I said, I want 2 to 3 kids, and I have 2 boys.
Yeah.
I want this type of house, which I have.
Whoa.
And yeah, and church on Sundays, and that's how it goes. I don't even remember. I vaguely remember some of that.
Yeah.
But I remember like envisioning what the house would look like. But I didn't know that I wanted to be a college professor.
Wow. Well, I believe in
Yeah.
manifestation. I really do.
Yes.
Well, so I first initially met you because of yoga and because, I was on that little side deal. But
In
then
Iowa.
but then when we became friends on like social media, I remember, like I really connected with you because it just seemed like we had a lot of like similarities, like really being into travel, even before I became a flight attendant, and just, doing some other things. But I also know that, you had, your twin sister, and you guys are
Yeah.
really close. And then your sister ended up getting sick. And we kind of talked a little bit about how, she, had this cardiac event, and I was diagnosed with, I don't know if it's a birth defect, if it's a heart condition during COVID. And then I felt like that's where I really like felt connected to you. So can you kind of like explain to people like what happened with your sister and
Yeah.
kind of her
And
story?
yeah, and now that you bring that up too, Joy, just to kind of preface our connection, I remember, like both of us being interested in like the arts and like the history, and you being in the military, and like I just was so respectful of you and just wanting to get to know like what that's like. And that's something that I've always been very curious about, different cultures and the arts and documentaries. And so I know we really share that passion. But yeah, so my twin sister, Erin Lewis, was her name because she has since passed. We were 35 years old, and she went into a sudden cardiac arrest. So it was very unexpected. When I talk about the story, I do always say that there are signs of it that I was seeing that I do feel were missed or dismissed. Not just in healthcare, but by her, and a lot of things we just don't know until we know. So till this day, we still don't know, or we're told what eventually caused the sudden cardiac arrest. But she had been having panic attacks, or so she thought. So I think what was happening is she was starting to have heart issues, and it was dismissed or just kind of labeled as like stress and anxiety, because a lot of those symptoms are the same. And I don't know if you experienced that as a woman
sure.
too. We try to, doctors, I think in healthcare, try to pinpoint all of these symptoms without overthinking it, and kind of start very baseline unless there is a emergency situation. So sometimes it's wait and see instead of prevent. I don't know, I'm not a healthcare professional, but from what I've learned. And so she didn't think that. I never thought that what happened ever could have been the result of what she was going through. But yeah, it was on November 12th of 2018 that her heart stopped very suddenly and caused a anoxic brain injury because she did survive and was revived, but she went without oxygen for over 12 minutes is what we estimated by the time she got to the ER, without intervention, without CPR. So please, everybody that's listening, make sure you have your CPR certification because you will save a life, instead of being afraid of it. And yeah, so that anoxic brain injury is what happens when your body doesn't receive oxygen, then your brain cells start to die when your heart stops. And so because of that time, that's why she was left with a severe brain injury. Yeah.
Now, when she had that brain injury, I know that you kind of became her caretaker and you were advocating for her, but even I didn't completely understand like what some of like the challenges she was facing in just being like properly cared for. And can you kind of talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that?
Oh, and yes, I will touch on some main points because it's very complex, and that's how it goes. Like you don't know or understand until you've been in that situation. And what my dad did in Omaha, or our dad, is he worked with people with disabilities. So we had seen what that was like for people that were disabled. But when you have an adult or a person that is very able-bodied, and then all of a sudden they have a brain injury and that drastically changes who they are. It didn't really even register in my brain like, oh, she's handicapped. Because with the brain injury or stroke, there's usually a lapse of when you can go to rehabilitation and see how can you improve or how can you get to a certain quality of life depending on the severity of the event. And so while going through all that, it never really I never did think to myself, like, until it was time, like, oh my gosh, she's handicapped. And so I didn't really understand what the depth of her condition was going to be until we got to that point. So that was about 6 months into her journey post cardiac event that we felt this is what Erin's life is going to be like. And so it wasn't until about that time when things, you have to accept and settle in that this isn't going to get any better. She's not going to improve beyond this, of what that meant for me and how I needed to become a caregiver for her. Again, I was just trying to help her survive and overcome a brain injury, which was impossible with the extent of brain damage that she had. So you're really in survival mode for a lot of time. And then it's hard for me to articulate. I think what we're used to is this was a serious event. Medically, it can mean many different things, but we just don't know until you've been there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I also just think about too, like when I was seeing all of, your stuff on social media and when you were like advocating for your sister, like I kind of took that moving forward, even just like as a flight attendant, like when I would see people that needed to actually be physically like carried onto the plane, just trying to figure out like, like how can I assist them, or if somebody was, with their family member and like traveling with them and just kind of trying to figure out, and sometimes, people were traveling to their family members, or they would come on the plane and they would be like really distraught and just trying to think, like, oh, wow, this is probably like what you, experience, and just even trying to how to figure out even just like how to transport them and how to, give them also that dignity. So even for me, like I took that in my daily life, even just like as an able-bodied person, just trying to figure out how I could assist people and have empathy, like when they're traveling.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up because that has really become my mission from my experience. And, go back to the advocating piece is growing up around people that had disabilities. And that's actually how my parents met before they divorced. They both worked for this organization called NCORE. It's since changed its name and it's escaping me right now what it's called now. Oh, it's, I think, Duo maybe, because the original acronym doesn't fit the times. So, but it was called NCORE. And so growing up around people with disabilities, that moment that I realized, I remember being in like a family meeting at the rehabilitation center, and the physical therapists are there and the occupational therapists and the nurses and the doctors, and saying, Sarah, like, to our family, this isn't going to get any better. We can't keep trying this type of rehab for her. And in that moment, like a handicap sign just like flashed in my eyes. And I was like, and I knew what was coming with that. So family and friends who had all this hope, who had been praying, thankfully, you know, and just doing amazing things for our family and for her, of trying to help her get better, like praying that something would change, that she would be able to talk and walk and go home and be with her son. So when I saw that severely disabled reality, I knew there was going to become a lot of social isolation and loneliness. I knew that as a disabled person, she was not going to get access to things that a person that's able-bodied. Being disabled takes a lot of agency and choice away from you. There was another person that I worked closely with on a board for people with disabilities that talked about a story of a woman with disabilities, called like 500 Hands or something like that, where all these different strangers that she would never know were going to touch her, whether it was healthcare professionals, CNAs. Like, imagine having that many different sets of hands, strangers on you that you don't even know. So things like that really came into my mind of, I have to put on this strong advocacy hat, because she can no longer talk for herself. She can't eat, she can't walk. She could communicate, but the layperson doesn't know how to respect the individual. Maybe sometimes, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to treat you with respect, but the dignity aspect. So I really went deep into that advocacy mindset, and it changed who I was forever. And so now I feel like my job is to educate more lay people and people outside of the disability circle on how to provide dignity of life to people that are disabled. And so, yes, flight attendants. And right now I teach healthcare professional students, and we were just having a conversation about communication yesterday. Joy, there were several times where the doctor or the nurse or the caregivers would pretend like Erin wasn't even there and talk about her in that way, or they would talk to me. But what I appreciated is when they would sit down and not assume that Erin couldn't understand, even with a severe brain injury, and say, Erin, hello, how are you today? And this is what we're going to do. And they would talk to her, because even though, and it drives me insane still, that people will say, oh, that person has the mentality of a 5-year-old and they're a 38-year-old adult. That's my role and my mission in life, is to say, educate that person on, well, you might think that, but that's not the truth. So, I mean, yes and no. So I really try to inform people of how to communicate with dignity and how to support people with dignity.
And I'm so happy that you said that, because of course, we learned that during our flight attendant training, but I think sometimes, you know, like if I have like a caregiver and, you know, the person, it's just like you're speaking directly to the caregiver and you're like, okay, so if you need anything, here's the call light, here's a blah, blah, blah. And that person is like looking at me, but I'm just assuming that they can't understand me.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel so bad.
Well, I think, again, it's just like a lot of things. Sometimes you make mistakes or you say things and you're not sure. And I think asking those questions is better. So say you have a parent and their child with Down syndrome. I would say absolutely talk to that child. Absolutely talk to that person. Or if you think about, if you talk to a parent and their child and you acknowledge the child, but this is what happens a lot too with people with disabilities. People think they have to talk to them like they're a baby, but they're not. So I would say talk to that person. It might feel awkward or different. And then ask the caregiver, is there a better way that I can communicate with the two of you or with your family member? I think that's okay. And you just have to be able to go out on a limb, because sometimes you're going to catch caregivers in very vulnerable moments where they might get angry, they might get frustrated, but it's best not to take that personal and take it as a learning opportunity.
Definitely. One of the big things that they always teach us is to ask, you know, like, how can I assist you?
Yeah.
And then you get, you know, like you put that power back on them and they can, you know.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes they might be ill-equipped to ask for the help, but because I was actually just on a flight this past weekend, and this poor child was screaming the entire time, and the parents got up, and you probably know how to handle this, and to the back just to try to do something different. and the poor babe was just not, it's probably 2, was just not calming down. And I went to the bathroom and I walked out and the mom just sobbing.
Yeah.
And I just stroked her arm and I said, it's okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's all right. Like, hang in there.
For sure.
Because you feel powerless.
Well, and I'm so happy you did that because even for me, like sometimes I have to pull parents to the side and I'm like, babies cry. Those passengers can put on their headphones.
Right.
They're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if this is like the only inconvenience you have today, like,
true.
yeah, you definitely you're going to have a good day.
Yeah.
Now, when we talk about, like your advocacy and you being a caregiver, like what were some of the struggles that you experienced when you were doing, like even just like with your life, like, I'm pretty sure that you weren't able to travel as much as you would have liked, or,
No.
just like some of the sacrifices you made.
Yeah, I think, there were a couple trips I went on. I think that maybe parents will understand like the guilt, traveling when someone needs you. And I definitely felt that for my sister. And as caregivers or as parents, any type of caregiver, you do kind of put yourself on the back burner, and our society labels it as selfish. I mean, I think number one, that internal struggle with myself. Number two, the struggle with people in my family and social circles that come from maybe more backgrounds where they do believe it's selfish to do those. Like I literally had a family member one time this was after my sister died, on a trip. I went to a grief retreat in Mexico, and it probably could have been anywhere, but it just happened to be in Mexico. And when I came back, this person said, yeah, I really did think that was selfish that you left your kids.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, I'm not going to take that personal. That's not me. That's on them. And I don't need to explain anything because I was dealing with my grief so I could be a better mother.
Exactly.
And it was one of the biggest turning points in my life, Joy, to actually do that for myself, to deal with the grief with a lot of trusted people. I didn't even know on this retreat, but the facilitator, I knew it was one of the most profound things I could have done that really changed the trajectory so I could be more present and could move on in my life and deal with grief. So I think those are the internal struggle, like with that internal struggle with myself of the guilt, and then just with other people that judge you or think you should be doing it a certain way. When the advocacy, I think I got labeled abrasive a lot. But on top of advocating, I was also dealing with the ambiguous loss. So Erin was alive, and she had really bad days where she would cry and scream and nothing seemed to help her. And just witnessing that and being powerless is emotionally draining, and it's turmoil that I wish on no one. And our family endured that. And so there's a lot of pain and grief and complication. Like you say, I always think, there's somebody on that flight that maybe just came from that.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So I think you just really have to get comfortable with yourself and trust yourself and be compassionate and find the people that support you. Because what was very draining is me trying to put on a face that everything was okay or make others comfortable.
For sure.
Around me and around my sister.
Oh, yeah. And see, I kind of relate with that a little bit because, my mother, came to America in 1980.
Wow.
She speaks perfect English. Like, Nigeria was colonized by the British. So, she really speaks English, but she has like this really thick accent. And, some of her like health struggles taking her, to places and even traveling with her, and it's like, even with my mom's thick accent, sometimes she doesn't want to speak to the flight attendant. She would rather have me speak to her because she doesn't want, you to say, huh, and it's just, and it's like at first I would get a little annoyed because I'm just like, Mom, you can use my flight benefits and travel anywhere in the world. But she like wanted me to travel with her, and she wanted me to like, just kind of be her protector. But now I kind of give her some grace because I'm like, to already feel like you're in a vulnerable state, and then to feel like you might have all of these challenges and you don't want to come off as rude. I'll come off as rude. I don't mind it. But like, she might not want to. So just feeling like, and you kind of talked a little bit about, you becoming a college professor, but can you explain like what your PhD is in, and just like, because honestly, I didn't even know that was like a thing So,
Yeah.
yeah, if you could explain
Yeah,
that.
sure. So I knew that I wanted to go back to get my PhD at some point before, even before Aaron got sick. I was like, okay, I'll be at the yoga studio, a 5-year plan, some maybe 10-year plan. Actually, right before it happened, we were getting ready to sign a new lease. And so I was like, okay, I'm committed. And then bam, it happened. And I was like, oh, life works itself out. But throughout that trajectory, that's when I started identifying as a family caregiver and realizing that there was research and services and this phenomena to support caregivers because I didn't even know that existed. I felt very connected and I said, this is what I want to do is I want to support caregivers so that they can be well and help their family members be well cared for and have dignity. And so there's a program at UNL, which I had stayed in touch with a former professor there for a program called Global Family Health and Wellbeing. And it's a really nice program through Child, Youth, and Family Studies and the Education Department at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln, because it takes a wide variety of interests within the global family scope. And so family caregiving just fit right in there. So I was able to, yeah, I got accepted, thankfully.
Yeah. So what exactly are you able to, I know you said you're a
Yes.
college professor now, but what exactly, like, do you
Yeah.
teach and,
Yeah. So typically, after your PhD, it's some like R1 or higher Division One schools. You might get assigned to do research and teach classes, or one or the other. So I am at Nebraska Methodist College here in Omaha, which is all for healthcare professionals, mainly nurses. But we also have surgical techs, respiratory therapy. It's an amazing institution. If anybody is looking into go to healthcare, not for physicians, but again, PT, OT, respiratory therapy, I think I said that, and radiology. And so I didn't even know they had an arts and sciences division there, which is really cool. And so, well, clearly we want our healthcare professionals to have a well-rounded education. So there's a new program there called CORE. And with my research background in family caregiving and understanding resilience and self-compassion and critical thinking, it was just a very good fit for me. So right now I teach all of healthcare professionals, like basically how do you care for yourself by knowing yourself, by thinking critically, what is resilience? What are your values? So it puts that emphasis again back on the caregiver for their well-being so that they can navigate patient care at the best of their ability. So even just yesterday, again, we were talking about communication. And so, we had the example of someone with like a language barrier or dialect. How do you handle those situations as a healthcare provider? And so we're trying to educate them so that people like your mother would feel comfortable in the doctor's office. So it's not just, what? I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
don't know what you said.
Yeah.
It's, let's have some patience. Let's navigate this together to be better healthcare professionals.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. I know my airline has like a board that has like disabled people that are on the board and they
Yeah.
kind of they have like a person in a wheelchair, a person that's blind, a person
Right.
and yeah, but I love the idea of like empowering the caregiver. And just like how you're working with like medical professionals, I wish we had somebody that could like work with the flight attendants and just kind of help us
Oh,
because that's
surprised
such
you
a
don't have that.
yeah.
It's
Because
like,
I mean,
who puts your mask on first? Your air
yeah.
mask?
I mean, because we have the training, when we do our 8 weeks of flight attendant
Right.
training, but then it's kind of like, and
Manage it.
we have it's called a CRO, and I'm not exactly sure what that acronym stands for, but that's supposed to be like if we have a question, we reach out to them. But I also just want just to, like, because people don't realize, like, being a flight attendant, it's nice you get to travel, but then also sometimes it's like you have 10 flights a weekend and you're exhausted and you have, a 20-hour day and you just commuted in from Nebraska and you're exhausted.
Yeah.
And then, like, how can we make sure that we're,
Taken care of.
yeah.
Well, because then essentially you are taking care of other people, like you're serving others. And I think that's a lot that we don't see the parallels between family caregiving, between teachers,
Yes.
between flight attendants, which is predominantly female roles. So I think that's a bigger sociological term. You and I could probably talk about that for
Yeah.
hours. But yeah, we don't really think about that because we're just saying, just do it. You're fine. Get through it. It's like, no, I can't. It is true that you can't take care of others the best unless you're also communally being taken care of.
And sometimes, it's like people are yelling at me because, they have this like long delay or, they're uncomfortable or they're traveling with a baby.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm trying to be there to assist you, but I also want you to know that like I'm going off of a 8-hour layover, I've been up for 15 hours. I'm exhausted. Like, I want to help you, but don't, like, I'm not your punching bag.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
But
I think in our culture, we have a long ways to go on learning about emotional boundaries.
yeah, for sure.
And I've fallen victim to it sometimes. Like, I think as a traveler or even as a patient, when I'm taking care of myself, it's like something happens and I go and I get very crabby. So it's a lot of self-awareness too, and like, how do we treat each other and how do we have compassion?
Definitely. And you kind of talked about the retreat you went to in
Yeah.
Mexico, but if you want to, delve deeper into that, or is there any other traveling that has
Yes.
just helped you like heal from?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, Mexico, that trip was very profound. But the following couple years, as part of my global family health and well-being experience for my graduate degree, I got to go to Ghana, Africa twice.
Yeah.
And I just remember being there, Joy, and it was the most present I've ever been in my life because I was somewhere new. I've always wanted to go to Africa. But I just got to take everything in, observe the culture, see how people interact without judgment. And that was just such a beautiful experience of being able to take myself out of the comfort of my, home state and country and go somewhere that was, pretty drastically different, I would say, and just appreciate the people for who they are there. It was lovely. And I hope to go back. So I got to go twice. I've been there for an equivalent of like 3 weeks, 2 weeks, one trip, 1 week for the other one, even being on the airplane. The first time I went, we got on the airplane to go and it was, I forget which airline, and there were people from Ghana getting on to go back home and Bob Marley's "Don't Worry About a Thing" came on, and I was like, "This is so awesome." Not that was related to Ghana, but the people are so incredible. And it was funny, like being there, we toured a lot of preschools, and some preschools that were nice, some that were not well equipped or financed, very different from the United States, but how much those preschool teachers love those students and those preschoolers is phenomenal. It just feels different from a preschool here. Not that people in the United States aren't loving to their children, but they are. It was just very different with the resources. And I had this moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm probably the first white person some of these children have ever seen. And so they would just look at me, and I'm again just observing. I'm not worried about anything like, oh my gosh, am I gonna impact them? You know what I mean? Just that human to human. And I love going there and just me being respectful to the culture as well.
Did you get to have some food?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Some jollof rice?
I did. Yeah.
You know what? I need to give you some Nigerian jollof
Yeah, I'd love
because
to try
there's
it.
like an ongoing argument over who has better jollof out of like Nigeria and Ghana.
Yeah. Well, even in Ghana, there's they make it differently. Like the restaurant's different from the professor we stayed with. And then even the professor and one of her daughters, she calls them, that comes to live with her, she made the jollof, and I was like, I really like yours. Don't tell Dr. Tacky. So hopefully she won't listen to this.
Yeah, that's so cool that did you guys have some off time to be able to explore on your own? And
A little bit, yeah. I mean, we were pretty integrated every day with just going from one preschool to the next, but we did go down to, and forgive me, I can't remember the name of the city or town, but we went to the largest slave castle on the coast of Ghana. And oh my gosh, again, just a place that other people probably will never go. I think a lot of Europeans are able to travel there. To be there and to see the history in real time. I was with one of my colleagues who was a Black American that was actually originally from ancestors from Nigeria, and my other friend from Ghana, and they're just weeping.
Yeah.
And it was, again, observational And I wasn't quite sure what to do. Do I cry? Do I just hold space for them? Because it
Yeah.
wasn't about me, but also knowing that my ancestors were likely part of that slave trade in some ways. So the stories I learned there, just again, deep respect, and that knowing what I know from being there and then coming back to the United States, I just was like, we are so privileged here
Yeah.
and take so many little things for granted. Yeah, so it was a turning point.
I definitely think traveling definitely changes like your worldview for sure.
100%.
Yeah. And you kind of answered this, but one of the questions I had was just like, how has travel like helped you, with your life and grief and just
Yeah.
everything?
It's what I do to again get new perspectives. So I have to be when I travel, I like to like do things, learn things, explore things, and then I come home and I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but that's just who I am and I've accepted it, but it does it so one of my grief mentor Wendy, who I went to Mexico with, the reason she started doing those trips was because she lost her son Noah when he was 8 months old suddenly. And she and her husband, of course, were distraught. And then they were like, well, let's take a trip together. So they went to Bali and they learned about how the Balinese culture handles grief over Western culture. And that was profound for them. And really learned about how grief turns into transformation if you let it. So I'm so grateful for her. And she does these retreats so that it does take you out of your space so that you can see things from a new perspective. And that's what I love to do is travel and ask people about their experiences and learn. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's like healing, but it's integrated into that transformative process. And it's always, for me, I learn new things. I am able to focus on my grief in ways that I can't hear. I think it takes me out of my comfort zone so that I can grieve. And
Now, when you say
yeah,
that, can you dig deeper into that? Because I almost think I understand, but like, do you almost feel like in your everyday life, like you can't really like collapse or you can't
right.
really, but then
Yeah.
when you're in a safe space and because you need to be strong
Yeah.
for your family and
Right. Well, and every day it's like you have to get up, you have to go to work. And I think we could create these containers for grief and it's doable in our daily lives. But sometimes it's, if you can't travel, Joy, it's getting up and going to another location, like a support group where there's something else, something's different.
yeah.
And we know that from like mindfulness research that actively noticing new things is mindfulness. And so I think that adds with travel is if I can get out of my comfort zone into new places, then I'm forced to face myself in ways that I didn't know before. And that's where I'm like in the grief and the complexity of it, that I'm like, oh, this is grief. Because there are places I've gone to, I think even when I went to Ghana, and you do feel vulnerable because I'm not like everybody else there, and everybody was so welcoming, but I wasn't going to put that expectation or energy onto others to say, take care of me while I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
It was very vulnerable, and in that vulnerability, I'm faced with a lot of the grief of missing my sister and my dad who had passed away, and my stepmom and brother, and you have to face it. And you can either shy away from it or you can face it and let it become part of that transformative process. So that's what travel does for me too. It opens my eyes. And then I'm able to let go and just accept and be open to those things. I feel like that's what's really transformative.
Yeah. Now, have you like found a way to honor your sister with your travels or through your travels?
Yeah, I'm still kind of figuring that out. You know, on this recent trip I just went to, we had the plan to take some of Aaron's ashes there because I was with my sister. And then at the 11th hour, I was like, this just doesn't feel like the time and the place yet. But yeah, I mean, when I went to Mexico, I remember it was a Saturday night and I got a glass of wine at dinner and nobody else did. And I don't drink a lot, but I was like, Erin loved the ocean. And she loved drinking wine. So I'm like, I'm gonna have a glass of wine and toast her in this moment.
Yeah.
And that made me feel very close with her. So I do like to create little rituals, or like when we were in Ghana, and even though we were in a very sad place, but there was also like this peacefulness of our ancestors and the ancestors to those people in Africa and Ghana. being near the ocean, you just feel closer to them. In those vulnerable moments, again, which is travel, I do feel closer. So I haven't necessarily like created a ritual yet, but that's really interesting. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, when I was coming up with the questions and I saw that, and then I was like kind of Googling some things, and I was like, oh, wow, that's like, because I honestly haven't really, I haven't lost anybody close to me.
Yeah.
I kind of did battle, with depression when I was like 13. And then during COVID, it was, we've kind of talked about it, but that was a really
Yeah.
tough time because I was diagnosed with my heart condition.
Yeah.
And before, like, I wasn't on the right medication, and it was like, I thought it was going to, like, I wasn't going to be able to do a lot of things. And fast forward, I am, and I have a great cardiologist. She's like so amazing. And it's interesting how, now I look back at that time so differently, and I just feel so like empowered and just, but travel has helped me so much, just even to get away.
Yeah.
And even just to like, because sometimes, I don't know, I feel like as human beings, we can get a little selfish and just kind of look so inward and kind of think, woe is me. But
All
then
the
it's,
time.
and it's
Yeah.
just kind of like, I'm going to take this medication for the rest of my life, but I can still do this and I can still do that. And then I'm also thinking, like every time I travel, I'm just like, wow, like I get to be out of breath on this hike. Like
Yeah.
my heart is broken,
Right.
but it's still pumping.
Oh.
Like it's still pumping.
Well, and that's something I learned about my sister. Everything joy was taken from her in an instant. And that's actually, my spirituality is partial. I'm a Catholic, but also like Buddhist and just open to spirituality. And in the Buddhist tradition, like you do recognize and accept that at some point everything will be taken from you. And when that happened to Erin, literally everything, her child, not in essence, but like she could not live with her son anymore.
Yeah.
She couldn't choose what she wanted to wear. Like she had really nothing that she could do anymore for herself. And so when I start, and people even that have like broken limbs or done things that they can't walk, they're like, wow, that really humbled me. I think the word is humble that I'm looking for.
Yes.
And I think that's what I approach with travel is I would not love to be humbled in a way where this isn't about me. So I aim to go out and explore and learn, and then somehow that impacts me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's really deep.
I know.
Yeah, that's
It
really deep.
is.
Now, what would you say to somebody who wants to travel, but they're trying how to navigate grief or just like an emotional journey, and they're trying to figure out, just like, how do I balance like, just like having fun again and just feeling like myself, but also there's something really heavy.
Yeah. Well, number one, I think you have to, again, figure out what's your relationship with travel, because we're really good about thinking we can run away from our problems. So the energy that you put into the travel, it's like, I'm going to go on a beach retreat and I'm just going to drink the whole time, that's not going to heal you, I don't think. And even that word heal, it's like, is complex.
Yeah.
It's more about becoming, I think. And so having that relationship, you have to figure out how you can be brave enough to open up your heart to the grief and to go into it. And it's very scary because I've been in grief in lots of different situations. And every time I tried to run from it, I ended up a lot worse. So I think that's the thing, is just thinking about where can I go in an environment where if I want to grieve that I feel safe, or that I feel like I can do that, So maybe it's not lying on the beach with a pina colada.
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe it is going on a grief retreat. Maybe it's going on a hike and doing something around people that are similar, or that may be wanting to go through that with you. So that would be, I think, just step one is understanding, like, why do you want to travel? Are you trying to run from something? Or are you willing to, again, meet yourself where you are in that travel?
Yeah, that's really powerful. Now, do you have like a bucket list, or do you have some like
My
future
gosh.
destinations that you like want to?
I'm really open to going to a lot of places. the next step is I really want to get my kids more into travel, which they don't love airplanes. So my son said, Mom, I'll go on one trip a year. So I'm hoping they grow into that. But
Do they like road trips or?
kind of. They're just, of the era of instant gratification, Joy. But that's my goal is like, even I would love for my family, I would love to do research somewhere where I could like live for a month and they get to come and do something. That is on my bucket list. Or maybe it's a place we go to often and so that's my hope. I would love to go all over the world. I want to go to Japan. I want to go back to Ghana. I kind of want to go to places that a lot of people don't go to,
Yeah.
They're like, let's go to the UK. All right, I would love that. But I want to go to the places that are a little untouched or that, because that's where you learn.
Yeah, that's actually my new thing right now, but it is getting a little complicated because I was literally just researching like just going to Afghanistan.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's like $300 for a visa, and then it's just like all these like things, but I'm like, I definitely, because like in the last couple of years, I've been to like Albania and just like I'm trying to like
Didn't you
branch
go to
out.
Croatia?
No, that's definitely on the bucket
I can't believe
list.
you haven't been there.
Yeah.
Everybody that goes there says it's the most beautiful place on the earth.
Oh, I know. Well, the funny thing, a little off topic, but my sister, she's my travel companion. So she really wanted to go to Croatia. Wow. So I said, okay, I'm not going to go to Croatia until we can go together. But with my particular airline, it's seasonal.
Oh, wow.
And it's out of Boston.
Oh.
And because it's seasonal, the flights are always packed.
Yeah.
And I was telling my sister, I was like, we might have to get a little creative. Like we might have to go to Amsterdam and then purchase a flight on like KLM. So cool. But because she works at a school.
Yeah.
She can fly like during the summers or spring break. Yeah. And the summer, it's like packed. So, just like.
Well, and that's also like part of my reality now. I'm a professor, so I only have limited time. But I mean, even just like domestic places, like I've never been to Boston or Baltimore. And with travel, I also try to be very mindful as a white woman of where am I going for pleasure, because I don't really want to go to I just try to be very mindful. Like I understand like travel is really important to some of these places because that's how people make money, but I don't want to go there and not be respectful of the culture.
Oh, for sure. Sure. Well, and it's funny that you say that because when I started telling people I wanted to go to Afghanistan and Algeria and all these things, like I got some backlash for it too, because people were just like, you're going to be supporting like, not nice people because you're going to be putting money into, and I'm just thinking, I read The Kite Runner, and I just want to like see, but that definitely, you definitely have to think about that because I don't know, it's like sometimes you want to go places that are kind of like untouched, and because you want to find the beauty, but then you also have to think about where your money's going and all those things.
Well, and we know even now more countries are like, we don't want Americans here.
Well, that too. Well, it's funny
it's
that
true.
It's funny that you say that too because it would be really hard for me to go with like a U.S. passport. So I was thinking about getting my Nigerian passport and my Nigerian citizenship.
Oh my gosh.
The military, but the kibosh on that.
Really?
So my security clearance. Go. Yeah, so I'm still trying to figure that, and I don't want to go on a deployment. Right. So that's like no, but so.
Well, I even feel like the French don't like Americans, do they?
A lot of people don't like us. They say we're loud, which is kind of true. But
well, I can't really argue with the way things are going right now that we're not going to have a lot of allies for a while.
Oh, I know. Which is kind of. Now, do you have anything that you want caregivers to know, just like from this whole podcast?
Yeah, I just think it sounds so cliche, but to give yourself grace and surround yourself with people that will let you be messy and complicated. And sometimes I had a conversation actually with a trusted person yesterday about the grasping. And so there's a fine line between trying to hold on to what isn't anymore and opening up to what is and what could be. And that changes. That's a lot of bravery and grief because we want to grasp to the way things were or grasp to the idea of what things could have been, with my sister and with my family. This image that I have of the family, it's not that anymore, but it's different. And so when we let go of those things and kind of open up to new realities and stay true to ourselves, I think we can start to be more self-compassionate, to accept things. So I think self-compassion is just one thing that is so important, as a caregiver, is just be kind to yourself, be mindful of when you are experiencing different kinds of emotions, including joy. Like, don't be afraid, don't feel shame to feel joyful in things. It's okay. Like, it's a hard journey, and the person you're caring for probably has those feelings too. So just be kind to yourself, mindful of that, and just remember you're not alone. So that common humanity, that's literally self-compassion, is those three elements. So you're not alone.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this conversation.
Yes.
I love talking to you.
You too, Joy.
Just means so much to me. Okay, so in closing, I just want to thank everybody for spending your journey with us. If this episode resonated with you, please, leave a comment, send a like. I want feedback. I'll also send this podcast to somebody who you think might need it. So just take care, and thank you for joining us today, and safe travels.